Let's get into it, everybody. This is your WrestleZone Catch Up for Tuesday, October 20th. A lot to get into. It's just me. It's just you. Some news to catch up on. Some Impact Wrestling to catch up on a Tuesday night or a Wednesday morning or wherever you're consuming it. Thank you for following us on YouTube, on Facebook, and all the social media channels, words that I can say those. What's up, everybody? I'm Kevin Kelm. We're looking here at a picture of sunny Florida, where most of the wrestling industry is based right now. AEW, WWE, and MLW, or their MLW going to be doing a restart pretty soon, are producing a majority of their content right now. We reported today at WrestleZone.com. Obviously, a situation we're all aware of COVID-19, and the situation in Florida is quite high. Yet the state of Florida is still welcoming to events like pro wrestling and professional sports. The NBA has their bubble down there, and Major League Soccer has also had their bubble down there to film and produce content, games, what have you. So WFTV is reporting in Florida today that WWE venues and MLW venues have been looked at as potential COVID-19 hotspots. Now, before you run to the hills and say, oh, this is all bad, just let me get the facts out here. WFTV has learned that Orange County Department health officials are investigating 17 businesses in total as potential places for COVID-19 spreading. 3 of the potential COVID-19 hotspots are related to WWE, including Full Sail University, the WWE Performance Center, where they filmed WWE NXT inside the Capitol Wrestling Center, and the Amway Center, where the WWE Thunderdome is for broadcasts of Raw, SmackDown, and WWE pay-per-views. Now, these are under investigation. Most locations, though, on the list are bars and restaurants. Now, WWE has issued a statement saying that WWE is not open to the public, but rather operating on a closed set with only essential personnel present. They added in the statement, as part of an ongoing testing protocols, Aventus Labs has administered 10,000 PCR tests to WWE performers, employees, production staff, and crew, resulting in a 1.5% positive rate compared to the current national average of 5%. Those PCR tests, they have a pretty high turnover if you research them, and they are not cheap. So WWE is spending quite a bit of money to run these protocols, and they've been doing these for some time into the late spring, early summer. There were some internal issues as to whether or not they were doing testing or doing enough testing. Once they kind of got the testing down, people think they've been able to manage this. They have had outbreaks. They have put people into quarantine. People have been exposed to people have been put into quarantines just as a precaution. And WWE even noticing that, adding, quote, additionally, extensive contact tracing takes place during impacted individuals are placed in 14-day quarantines and then only cleared after they test negative. So WWE definitely trying to put out the front that they're doing everything they can while still trying to produce content in the state of Florida. No comment that we can publish right now from Major League Wrestling. Their venue, Guilt Nightclub in Miami, is being investigated as well, which is a regular venue for MLW television, including the one-shot relaunch that they're working on. So there's a lot to obviously be concerned about here, but I don't want anyone running to the hills just yet. This is still a situation where you have big organizations like WWE, big sports organizations, big films. They're going to do these, and you will have outbreaks, and hopefully you can control them, mitigate them, use contact tracing, use as much testing as possible, and try and keep people as close to a bubble as you can. I mean, that's why you aren't seeing Raw Underground really present on Monday at Raw, as there is a belief within the industry, not directly from any sources within WWE, that was done because you were using a lot of extras around the ring for those backstage fight segments with a lot of extras there. So why would you have people outside the organization that aren't tested, that aren't thoroughly tested constantly there and taking what you would say a risk you can't really mitigate all that much? So when you're thinking about this, WWE and these other organizations trying to do the best they can on, of course, scary circumstances. Also, we had the go-home edition of Impact Wrestling. They have Bound for Glory coming up on Saturday on pay-per-view. This is a pretty stacked card. We ran down the whole card on our most recent episode of WrestleZone Wrap-Up. That is available in our podcast feed. Also on our Facebook watch page and YouTube, me and Robert DeFilas break that all down. It looks like a really strong card. I know Impact sometimes gets overshadowed by a lot of other things going on in the world of wrestling, but I really think they have a really, really strong card. I checked out tonight's show, and let me tell you, this show is a 7.5 out of 10. It's some of the best wrestling I've seen this week. I thought SmackDown from WWE was great. I thought Raw was a little underwhelming this week. It had some high parts, but the low parts stood out. This was a lean, mean show that had a lot of vignettes that didn't feel too long on the tooth. A lot of Lucha Underground vibes on Access TV. A lot of people fighting all around. A lot of characters getting themselves over in their own specific ways with their own signature touch on things. And, really just hammering down the nails for the big title matches that are going to be this Saturday. This is a great show. I highly suggest you check out the tag team main event, which sets up a 4-way title match on Saturday featuring the Good Brothers versus the North of Ethan Page and Josh Alexander. Of course, the Machine Guns, the reigning tag team champions, Alex Shelley and Chris Sabin, got involved along with Austin and Madman Fulton. This was quite the show. Quite the way to end it. It was a non-finish, but it was okay. It lent itself to what was going to happen. Are we going to see the Good Brothers fulfill themselves as the big signees that jumped over from getting let go by WWE and now being able to turn something into something special? You get that. Also, another great match, what feels like a go-to feud for Impact Wrestling featured on this episode with Eddie Edwards taking on Sami Callihan. Of course, Sami Callihan infamously breaking his eye socket with a baseball bat. A lot of people still remember that, and they had a very long, drawn-out feud. And Eddie Edwards and Sami Callihan just having a low-down, brawling fight. There was power bombs, there was moves, but these guys were hitting each other. There was a sequence where they were slapping each other in the corner, and it was pretty severe. This all builds up to Eddie Edwards taking on the legendary Ken Shamrock with Sami Callihan in his corner. Interesting that Sami Callihan, such a big star for Impact for so many years, is not featured on this card, at least in the ring, kind of in a supporting role. But Ken Shamrock hitting the ring here after Sami Callihan used a phone to use his hacking abilities. Remember when he was a hacker in WWE? He's able to do that now in Impact. And it caused some lights to flash, some chicanery, some gaga, right? Ken Shamrock hits the ring. Big belly-to-belly suplex. Nearly ripped his foot off. I enjoyed it. It was maybe a little bit overcooked, but I enjoyed it. It lent itself to quite a bit of the action here. Other strong parts on the show are EC3 getting to a match which feels like very creative outside of the ring, cinematic style wrestling with him and Moose set to take each other on for the TNA Championship. And if EC3 can get it back, he can burn it. It's kind of confusing, but I'm not exactly not sold on it. I would say it's the most confusing thing coming out of the show, but I'm still intrigued. He'll fight Moose for that title that exactly isn't a world title. Kind of odd. They had him hold that when they were still trying to figure out who their world champion was, and Tessa Blanchard wasn't going to wrestle on Impact. So it was that would say that's kind of my odd thumbs in the middle. But overall, 7.5 on this show. Really, really good. 7.5 out of 10. Go seek it out on Access TV. Also, got to check out tonight a very, very fun episode of this special that they've launched with just very hilarious guys. Good Brothers, Carl Anderson, Luke Gallows. They just look like they're having so much fun. If you got to check out their Talkin' Shop Mania podcast that has become a pay-per-view with Talkin' Shop Mania, they're going to do another one in November called Talking Shop 2, Night of the Male Body Part Torture. Can I say that? Yeah. So it's pretty ridiculous. This special was kind of like a long commercial for a bunch of different merchandise they're doing. They have their own whiskey. They broadcast it from the Turnbuckle Bar in a rural town in Georgia. It had a ring inside there. They had a ridiculous match with the winner getting a match on Explosion. And Scott D'Amore interrupted them several times, demanding that they have a big guest star. It was very, very funny. They also showed a clip of their upcoming animated series, which would be a web series featuring a certain person you can Google by the name of Lisa Ann. If you do that, you may have to erase your search history. And this animated series they're going to be putting out is pretty adult themed. It was pretty funny. It had Scott D'Amore with abs, which is hard to believe. It's something you can do in a cartoon. That was pretty funny. Just a lot of very, very funny things. Scott Steiner made an appearance on this show. They had a guy who looks like Ric Flair, but is definitely not Ric Flair. And just the lines. They were drinking the whole time. Luke Gallows specifically saying, when Scott D'Amore demands and he makes all of his minions who's trying to put off as their guest stars. Scott D'Amore's like, no, I want a real guest star. You take these goofs, put them in the ring. Let's try and turn this into a wrestling show. And he goes, there's a ring. There was a ring the entire time in the bar. This is a half an hour into an hour-long show. And Luke Gallows, Doc Gallows, excuse me, says, there's a ring? Like he's how drunk are you? If you've had fun drinking with your friends and enjoying wrestling, this is mandatory viewing. I don't think you need to watch it in line with the show. Maybe you want to save it before Saturday. Maybe you're just a Talking Shop fan and is it good? If I'm a fan of the podcast, is it good? Yeah, it's pretty darn good. It's pretty out there and funny. A lot of appearances, just a lot of goofy. Don't take it seriously. If you watch that show, don't take it seriously. This feels like a fun extension of their brand and the things they do. I want to see more of it. I enjoyed Talking Shop Mania. I enjoyed this. If you like inside humor, you're a hardcore wrestling fan, you'll get jokes about Disco Inferno that are snuck in there. They'll have jokes about the payday. They'll have jokes about performing to the hard cam. Just a bunch of ridiculousness. A lot of physical comedy, a lot of lines in there. Sometimes you'll have to rewind it and catch some things. Is it funnier than Talking Shop and Mania? No, but in terms of being on TV and then, being limited by what you can put on television, they really went for it. This is really, really, really entertaining. So what do you think of the stories that I laid out here for you today? What do you think of Impact Wrestling and their build for Bound for Glory this Saturday on pay-per-view? What do you think of the build for WWE Hell in a Cell? We have that full coverage, and we'll have a live post-show here on YouTube and Facebook afterwards, and plenty of more content for you to devour in our podcast feed, including an interview with Josh Alexander of Impact Wrestling talking about this Saturday's Bound for Glory, James Storm, the biggest free agent in pro wrestling, talking about his future. All those available in our podcast feed. Now, go subscribe on your podcast app of choice. Spotify, iHeartRadio, TuneIn, Apple Podcasts. They're all there. And just remember, when watching wrestling, please do the most important thing. Comment, complain if you want, but sometimes just take a deep breath, crack that beer open, yell a hell yeah, buddy, and enjoy wrestling.